So today, I'm gonna tell you how a group of 10 non-technical law students build a fully functional landlord-tenant law app in 8 weeks. My name is Adán Ordóñez. I go to the University of Chicago Law School. I am part of the University of Chicago Law AI Lab. And our challenge this quarter was to build a fully functional app and try to not only deploy it to production, but also to market it and to, do PR and get users on it. And we succeeded. We launched the app last week and we've already gotten over 200 users in just a week since we officially launched. It's been one of the most fun experiences that I've had in my short legal career as a law student. It was truly a blast, and it really opened not only my eyes, but also I think everybody else in the class's eyes on how AI tools can help bring a product to life, even if you're not the most technical person. I'm gonna tell you how we built it, and maybe you could try it yourself. All right, so the first day of class, our professor, who recently sold his legal tech startup, told us that there are over 40 million properties that are rented in the United States. Within each property, there's many renters. Sometimes there's one renter, sometimes there's many. The whole goal of the class was to build an app that would give them access to justice. The first class, we weren't quite sure how we were gonna do that. We, as legally trained law students, could go a route where we could do a lot of legal research, read all the statutes, make a big database, which actually landlord-tenant law is kind of crazy because every state differs in its landlord-tenant law. So it makes it pretty difficult to know what law applies to each renter. We kind of had to figure out do we go this route where we do all this research, or do we go the route where AI figures it all out? At that time, ChatGPT 5 had just come out, and basically what we realized throughout this whole quarter while building this app is that ChatGPT 5 and other AI tools are just as good as us doing legal research and making a big database that houses all these statutes. With web search features that Perplexity offers, it's actually quite easy to find the correct law for tenants. What we ended up doing, we ended up building a framework that finds the correct laws and applies it to a renter's lease. With that, we came up with Lease Chat. Lease Chat, what it does at its core, a renter comes in, they input their lease into the system. We built a very elaborate prompting and research system that basically takes in all the information from their lease, takes in all the outside information from whatever municipality they're in or whatever city or state they're in. It gathers the correct information to, one, identify issues within the lease, two, just generally inform the renter about the lease, and three, basically help with the renter with anything else. The renter could chat with the lease, the renter could draft templated letters to the landlord from the lease and from the statutes. It was a pretty cool tool to find this information. Like, anybody could go on ChatGPT, say, hey, here's my lease, and ask it questions. But if they don't prompt it the right way, and if they don't have the right plan, like if you're using the free ChatGPT account, you're probably not gonna get the same results that you will with Lease Chat. And the best thing about Lease Chat is that it's free. So you're getting pro access to ChatGPT and Perplexity free. And that's by design, because our mission at the AI Lab was to make this tool accessible to people. And the best way to do that, to ensure that we made it accessible to people, is to make it free and spread the word out there. Anyways, in this video, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the different components of the app and how it works. In following videos, I'm gonna do a more technical deep dive and show you guys how I actually made it using Cursor and my technical knowledge, a little bit of background on the class. 10 students, one professor. 9 of the students are non-technical. They do not know how to program at all, but they're very good lawyers, very good researchers. Obviously, they're at U Chicago, very smart people. I would say I'm decently technical. I know how to program, but I'm not the best programmer in the world. I am very mediocre, average programmer, but I used the help of Cursor, which is an AI-assisted coding tool, to basically bring this app to life. And the cool part about it is that we finished the first prototype in 2 days. We had the first class of the quarter. I emailed the professor telling him that I could build the app. He was gonna outsource the building of it. I actually ended up building it in 2 days. Not the full functional app that you see today, but the bare bones of it. It's kind of crazy. It blows my mind how quickly you could get apps up to speed and make them, production ready in a short amount of time. But anyways, let's get into it. Like I said, basically what you do is you upload your lease, you enter Lease Chat. The cool thing about Lease Chat is that you don't have to create an account or anything. Like, you just go on there, you submit your lease, it's anonymous, it does everything, and you can export the information, and then you can get out, never to be seen again. We use this software called OCR. Once you upload the lease, what happens is that it goes through an OCR software. OCR is optical character recognition. And what that means is it's just a fancy word for saying you upload a PDF, the PDF extracts the text from it. The first thing that we have to do is figure out how to get it to read leases. A lot of leases are very long. Some of them over 100 pages. Some of them that we saw were at least like a little bit over 200 pages. Pretty crazy. So how do we extract all the text? What if it has images? What if it has tables? Like, how are we gonna get the text and make it accurate? So that was a challenge. Again, I'll go over in another video. We used this system called LlamaParse to do OCR extraction. LlamaParse is an AI-assisted OCR extractor. We actually ended up doing a little bit more elaborate. It's not just LlamaParse anymore, but I thought it would be a pretty good tool to help it get most of the information that we needed from at the beginning. Because if the thing with AI is that if you don't extract the correct information, if it's not given its context, like let's say you extract the text from a lease and it gets some of the words, but it's missing the lease amount. Like how much do you have to pay per month? That's a big issue. The best way that we were able to get the best result was using LlamaParse and some other tools that I will talk about later. So if you go down the line, once you have the text extraction, all that text goes through a few different API calls. An API is an application programming interface. In simple words, it's like the glue that connects two different applications together, two different processes or functions together. In this case, it was the OCR extraction, like that text, and connecting that with the actual output of the system. And in between that, we use the OpenAI API and the Perplexity API. The OpenAI API, what it did is once it got the text, OpenAI is a large language model, it's ChatGPT as we all know it. What we did is we took chunks of that text because AI, there's a thing called a context window. So it means that I can't just paste 122 pages worth of words into ChatGPT. It's gonna be too long. So what you do is that you chunk it, you save it, and you store it as different chunks. So think about maybe taking 2 pages at a time, just that text, and then you input that into ChatGPT. After that, what we did, we took those chunks, we gave them to ChatGPT, and we created numerous queries. And what that means is that we created a lot of different prompts to gather information. Prompts such as, based on this text, what is the lease amount? Based on this text, when does the lease start and end? Based on this text, who are the renters? So we had over 40 of them in the initial app that we created. What that does is it allows you to extract all the text. If you think of a lawyer reading through a lease, they're gonna skim through a lot of it and they're gonna pick up on the things that are important. So that's what we're having the AI do here. On one end, that's OpenAI. On the other end, we used Perplexity because we thought that it had the best AI-assisted search engine. So when we ask it questions and that information is not within the lease, it goes out and it searches the web for that. Perplexity was very effective at finding the correct statutes that have to do with the different lease provisions. Once it goes through the OCR, once we extract all the information with ChatGPT, once we collect all the different statutes and outside information from Perplexity, that gives us a few different reports, and which I will go over later. So at the end, we get a very general report, like what's the general information in your lease. The second thing is a know your renter's rights table, which we took 10 different categories that we decided were the most common types of information that a renter would want, such as deposit terms, such as lease termination, repairs and maintenance. And what we did is we used the Perplexity information to pull out the information that the statute says in plain English, and then combine that information to see how it interacts with the lease. And for that, we used a technology called RAG, which is called Retrieval Augmented Generation. Basically, in simple terms, what that does is it takes all the text and it finds the most relevant information within that text. It's a very complex mathematical equations. In order to find that, I do not know how it works, but I know that it pulls out the correct chunk from within my text to answer different questions. Again, I will go over that more in a different video. The third report is a common scenarios report. And so again, we figured out it's almost like a frequently asked question section. The way that we set it up was kind of like that, like common scenarios. What happens if I break something? What happens if I don't pay my rent? And so we answered those depending on what's in the lease, and again, depending on what's in the actual law. Once we have those 3 reports, we then repurpose that information and we allow users to chat with the lease. So you could ask it questions, like let's say something did not get covered. I have an example. My sister is trying to terminate her lease right now because there is noise outside of her apartment at 3 a.m. And she asked me, she's like, hey, you're a lawyer. I was like, no, I'm a law student. But she's like, what can I do here? I was like, honestly, go to lease chat. It'll give you the information about the night code. And so that's something that is not in the lease. Like the lease does not say if there's noise in your apartment, you can terminate your lease. That's something that you need to go look at to the law for. So from there, she just went on the chat with the lease section. She asked that question and she got her answer. Unfortunately, she can't do anything about it. These are different use cases that you could have for the app. And the third thing that we have is the letter generator. So if you've ever wanted to email your landlord like an angry letter asking for your deposit back because they haven't deposited it, they haven't sent it back to you in 2 months after you leave, Lease Chat helps you generate those so you can email them and sound smart like a lawyer would. All that is made through this process, right? Like we do the OCR extraction, we run the AI on top of it with different queries and different prompting, and then we end up generating this curated set of information. The difference between what we do and what OpenAI, like ChatGPT would do if you asked it, is there's quite a big difference, because when you use ChatGPT, it's just going off its general training. We're going one step above, and we're making sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's, kind of like how a lawyer would with this app. At least we try to get as close as we can. So just a little overview of how it was built. The web framework, like the back end and the front end, like that was Next.js, which I will talk about later. It's a web framework to build apps. For the UI, I used different components, which are kind of like puzzle pieces that you see. Like for example, on the website, if you look at this landing page, these are all little components that I put together. And I used a component library called ChatCN. I don't know if I'm saying it right. That's what I used. I used Supabase for the database. And so that's it's a very easy way to set up your database where all the information is stored and regurgitated. We use Vercel for hosting. So hosting is basically like when you deploy a web app into the web, you need to host it somewhere. So this hosting is just like there's a server somewhere in the desert and it runs your application, all day and night. So Vercel, very easy setup. OpenAI and Perplexity, Llama Parse for the OCR. These were kind of the building blocks that we used to create this app. Again, there's little nuances and it wasn't actually that simple. Like it does require like quite a bit of domain knowledge, but that's where there is a very big opportunity for non-technical people that have a lot of expertise. Like let's say you're an M&A lawyer and you really know how to do due diligence on a new company that your client is acquiring. If you can distill that information into first principles and think about it in like a web framework, you can create some apps like this. I will say that to have a production ready app that a lot of people use, I'm not quite sure that somebody that's non-technical can put it out in production and make it be like a safe app that scales. I think at some point you're gonna need some pro help, but you can create prototypes to test out different ideas. And it's kind of how we built this app at the beginning, and since we've launched, we've had to make some changes. I think it's incredible. It's an amazing human advancement that we can create things like these in such a quick time that could help so many people. That is the first video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one where we'll talk about how we put the app together.